Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands. And for this video I'm going to go through 10 black and white horror movies that I think are awesome. So some of these films are very popular, I'm sure you'll know them, but a few of them I don't hear a lot of people talking about, so might get some decent recommendations for black and white movies. And I did do a video recently on movies from the 1950s, so anything that I talked about in that film I'm going to leave off. I'm going to try and talk about different films for this video. So the first movie is Carnival of Souls. Really effective and very creepy movie about this young woman. She's involved in a car accident. And sometime after the accident, she kind of up and leaves. She leaves her town. She quits the job that she's doing, and she sort of goes on her travels to find other things. And along the way, she's kind of haunted by this mysterious-looking man, and has like these visions of like a deserted fairground area, that kind of thing. It's all very weird and all very creepy, but a very, very enthralling film. It keeps you wondering, and it all kind of leads up to a climax, like to a big reveal, if you will. And the film for me was somewhat predictable. I kind of knew where it was going, but it's made so well. It's such an intriguing film that it doesn't really take away from the enjoyment of it. And it's a movie that stayed with me since the first time I watched it. It's a really, really effective film. So, first movie on the list is Carnival of Souls. And this is not like a top 10, it's just alphabetized, just so I can recommend these movies. Next up is Frankenstein. I'm sure you'll all know this movie. One of the most iconic movies of all time, so had to give it a shout out on this list. This for me is on here as a representative of all the Universal monster movies. I could have added every single one of those films to this list, but I'll limit it down to one. And I picked Frankenstein because, like I say, for me it's one of the most iconic horror films. And I really like the black and whiteness of this film. I think it adds to it. That vintage look kind of complements this type of movie. And I love the setting. I like it in the laboratory. I like the climax in the countryside and in the windmill scene. I think it all looks really well and creepy but elegant at the same time. So you all know this movie, I don't need to go into it, but certainly wanted to give it a recommendation or a shout out for this countdown. So that's Frankenstein. Okay, next up is a film. I wanted to include this because I never hear anybody talk about this film. It's from 1940 and it's one of the funniest horror comedies I've ever seen, and it's the Ghostbreakers. This is such an enjoyable film. This is a Bob Hope movie. Bob Hope really on top of his comedy game in this film. All of his jokes, all of his one-liners land really well, and they're so funny. In the film, I think he's like a radio personality, if I remember right, and he inherits this like lucrative mansion, but it's located in like this haunted swampland area. So it basically inherits a haunted house, and he goes over there with Paulette Goddard and his chauffeur person, and they have to kind of take on the ghosts that are in the house. But it's so funny. Like I say, for 1940, I personally don't find a lot of vintage comedy all that funny, but this one is hilarious. It has me laughing out loud. Very, very quotable film. Very enjoyable to watch. The characters are really good, very likeable people. And yeah, just such a funny film. Like I say, for 1940, for it to be so funny is very rare for me. And I wanted to give this one a mention because, like I say, I don't hear people talk about this one. And it would be nice if more people did perhaps see this and get some enjoyment from it. So that's the Ghostbreakers. Okay, next up, this is a film that I meant to talk about on my 1950s video, but forgot to do so. So I'm going to include it now, and that is the original Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Probably the only Godzilla film I think that is truly serious and actually does go into quite dark territory. In this one, if you've not seen the original, Godzilla is kind of lacking any kind of personality. He is just like a giant creature that is destroying the city. He's awakened by A-bomb testing, so a bit of social commentary there for the time. And like I say, it is quite dark. It is actually quite scary, I think, because like I say, there's no kind of personality, there's no sort of novelty in this one. He really is a creature that's hell-bent on destroying things, and it's pretty intense in places. So if you've not seen the original Godzilla and you're kind of more used to the more kid-friendly Godzillas, watch this one. You might be pleasantly surprised, I guess, by actually how well made this film is. So that is the original Godzilla. Next up on the list, another famous movie, The Haunting. Really, really well made film. This movie is more about what doesn't happen rather than anything else. It's a very subtle film, very suggestive. It's very frightening, but it's kind of what you don't see, more what you kind of hear and feel that is scary, rather than anything coming out and coming at the characters. Been a while since I've watched it, but I still remember most of the scenes from this. Those scenes when they're in the bedroom and you can hear the banging, things like that are really creepy. And like a lot of movies on this list, just a really, really well made, well put together film. So that's The Haunting. Okay, next up is a film that I've only just recently watched. I showed this in my last update, and this is The Horrors of Spider Island. This is a German film about some like supermodels and their agent who their plane crashes on an island, on Spider Island, and they are kind of stalked and killed off by these spider creatures. It's a very schlocky affair, but one that I found very enjoyable. I do like kind of creature features and things like that, and this had some enjoyable scenes of rubber spiders coming down from the trees and terrorising the actors and actresses and things like that. It's a little bit sort of there's a bit of kind of character driven nonsense in it, but like I say, I had a fun time with this one. It's very much kind of light-hearted entertainment, at least by today's standards, but one that I had a lot of fun watching. So because it's not one that I'd ever come across until recently, I thought I'd give this one a recommendation. If you like those kind of 1950s B-movie type films, this one was very enjoyable. Right, next up, another very famous one, Psycho. Don't have a lot to say about this one. To be honest, I just couldn't do this countdown without including this movie. One of the horror films that kind of brought horror out of dark castles and into modern society, if you will. Norman Bates is still a fantastic, fascinating character. And I love the fact that they killed off Janet Leigh's character rather early on in the film. That was unheard of back then. So, props to the filmmakers for doing that. I always think that's really cool and quite an impressive thing for a film that's this old. So, won't go into too much about Psycho. But like I say, just had to give it a mention. Okay, next up on the list is Repulsion. This is a brilliant film, probably my favourite film from Roman Polanski, and it's kind of a study of this woman who has a mental breakdown, if you will. She is left alone in this house all day, and she kind of just starts to lose her mind. She starts to lose the plot, and towards the end of the film it kind of escalates in violence and murder and that kind of thing. It's hard to kind of say why this is so good. It's kind of something that you just need to see, I think, and And if you're like me, I really appreciate how the story was told and how things developed and how it kind of moves along quite subtly but effectively from this woman kind of slowly losing her grip on sanity to the kind of violent climax. It's really, really well done, and one that I've only seen this once, but it's one that I'm still very fond of. And when I think about it, I just think about how well made it was and how well they dealt with a subject that not a lot really happens in it. It's sort of a one-track story, but it's dealt with so well and so effectively. So definitely a film that I'd recommend if you want to see that kind of psychological movie. Okay, next up, another one that I don't hear people talk about much, so I wanted to give it a mention. This is The Screaming Skull. Now, it's been a while since I've watched this one. Like a lot of films, I don't really remember the details, but I remember that I really liked it. This is about this woman. She finds a skull, I think, which it kind of haunts her, or it creates some deaths or something like this. But it was a really interesting film. I know it sounds a bit rubbish because I can't remember it, but I do remember really enjoying it, and it has a great twist, which I do still remember, but I won't reveal. And I remember being quite surprised that sort of this quite sort of simple film from the 50s had such a twist. I thought that was pretty good. So like I say, don't remember too much about it, but I know it was good. So I'm going to recommend this one because I don't hear many people talk about it. Okay. And last, but certainly not least on the list, is a film that I've just watched. It was a big inspiration to do this list, and that is The Virgin Spring. This movie was absolutely fantastic. I remember talking about this in my recent update video. I bought it because it is a precursor to the like rape revenge genre, which in the 70s the exploitation filmmakers would really find success with. And it deals with the same kind of theme. So movies like Last House on the Left and I Spit on Your Grave, even things like The Exterminator, that kind of thing, it kind of deals with the same themes. But whereas they were very much like grindhouse, gritty movies, this is like the upper echelon of cinema. This is like Ingmar Bergman, who is a wonderful filmmaker, and it's him dealing with that what would later become a very kind of gritty, dirty genre. Not that I don't dislike those films, I really like them, but this is told very different, and it's really interesting to see those themes dealt with in a completely different way, and in a way that's much more artistic and poetic and beautiful, but at the same time is dealing with really dark and disturbing concepts. And this is a very dark movie, very bleak, but brilliantly acted, wonderfully shot. Max von Sydow plays the father of the young woman who's raped and killed, and the perpetrators hide out at his, well, they don't hide out, they are welcomed to stay at his farm, and then in time they realise what they've done and take out their revenge. So it is pretty much just exactly the same premise as Last House on the Left. Some people do consider Last House on the Left to be a remake of this movie, but it's wonderfully made, absolutely fantastic, one of the best films I've seen in a long time. So that's my list, guys. Please let me know what you think of that, and if there's any on here that I've not said, let me know. Let me know if there's any black and white horror films in particular that you really like. I'd be very interested to know your thoughts. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.